When they fire this thing up, this thing will sit there and spin like that. Yeah. And it just chews the coal up.
Coal mining in Indiana. For nearly 200 years, Hoosiers in the southwest part of the state have played a major role in delivering coal as a source of energy. But there's a huge transition underway on how we get our power. AES Indiana moving away from coal and investing in cleaner energy.
So in total, $1.1 billion in investments that would add additional natural gas to our portfolio, add additional energy storage and solar. And
AES President Brandi Davis-Handy on the utility's huge energy investment, its longtime role in providing power to Hoosiers in central Indiana, and what the future looks like. She's my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. This is a transformational period for Indiana utilities as they move toward a greener, cleaner way to provide energy to Hoosiers. AES, one of those companies. And I am very pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by the president of AES Indiana, Brandi Davis-Handy. Brandi, great to see you as always. How are you?
great seeing you. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
You bet. Well, you were elevated to the role of president at AES Indiana, I think earlier this year in February. Want to talk about your career, but your path to the president's office. But first, AES has been in the news recently for some really big announcements. Most recently, more than $1 billion investment at your Petersburg generating station, part of a massive transition that's taking place, energy transition in Indiana, but a transition for AES Indiana as well. Talk about the news at Petersburg, the amount of money, and the fact that Petersburg has really been a big part of fueling and powering central Indiana for a long time.
Yeah, a lot of news coming out of Petersburg, which is in Pike County, the people of Petersburg, Indiana, are a huge part of our overall AES Indiana story. And so a lot of people don't realize our Petersburg generating station, which those units went online back in the 1950s. There at one point were a total of 4 coal units. And so we have retired units 1 and 2. And earlier this year, we filed a request with the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission to repower the remaining units 3 and 4 from coal to natural gas. So that is, we are still awaiting word from the IURC. We most recently in the last 2 weeks had an evidentiary hearing. And so our hope is to hear back about our plans to repower those units in October or November of this year. The other piece to the plans that we're announcing is the investment in the Pike County Energy Storage Facility, as well as the Petersburg Energy Center, which this is adding. So in total, $1.1 billion in investments that would add additional natural gas to our portfolio, add additional energy storage and solar. And why I believe this is exciting is, Petersburg and the people of Petersburg have powered Indianapolis for more than 50 years. And so as we think about this energy transition, one point that I always make, it's not just about the transition, but how we bring our people and our communities along. And I think that this is a great example of how you can get to a better place within this energy transition, but continue to invest in the communities and the people that honestly have powered the lives of those in Indianapolis for quite some time.
This is part of a commitment you made several years ago to essentially eliminate the use of coal in Petersburg by 2026, right? So to go away from coal. And as you mentioned, kind of a 3-pronged effort there with natural gas, solar, and the battery storage area as well.
Yeah, so if you go back to 2022 is when we filed our most recent integrated plans, which looks at how we're going to power the future needs of our customers for 20 years and beyond. And so that plan that we filed at the end of 2022 was the boldest plan in terms of sustainability efforts in our company's history. So alongside our $1.1 billion announcement in Petersburg, there's a number of things that we've also done just this year. So earlier this year, we announced the acquisition of the Hoosier Wind Farm, which is a 106 megawatt facility in Benton County. In addition, we just completed construction of the Hardy Hill Solar Facility in Clinton County. So we made the commitment to transition to cleaner, greener resources. And also, I think the point that I'm most proud of is doing in a way that really balances the impact to our customers. And so with all of this change happening within our portfolio, I'm still proud to say that we're among the lowest rates, residential rates of any other investor-owned utility in the state of Indiana.
As you look at what you're doing in Petersburg, obviously it's a huge investment, $1.1 billion. But give folks an idea. I mean, it's just got to be an enormous undertaking to go through that process and to make that transition, again, from coal to, in this case, natural gas.
Yeah, it's a huge effort. And so specifically, these three projects that we're investing in, this $1.1 billion will be invested between this calendar year, so 2024 through 2026. In addition to how we're working with our people at Petersburg. So we have about a little more than 200 people that currently work there. We're also focused on reskilling and retooling for the tools needed for the future. So we have a history of people at our company that's been there for 30 and 40 years. And so ensuring that as we transition fuels, that we are giving our people the needed tools to ensure that they can continue their careers with AES. The other part is during this kind of 3 years of construction, we're adding more than 300 construction jobs. And so that absolutely impacts and is of a great benefit to those in Pike County.
As you look at that energy transition, some numbers I think I read not long ago, 10 years ago, about 99% of your energy came from coal, and you've reduced so far that carbon footprint by about 70%. Is that accurate? So that's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, it's a major transition. And I'm happy to say that once the completion of the repowering of units 3 and 4, pending approval from the commission, will be the first utility in the state of Indiana completely out of coal. And we've done so in a way that diversifies our portfolio, which is important in terms of keeping rates affordable for our customers.
As you look, and you've mentioned it earlier, solar and wind, battery storage, the quote unquote, all of the above strategy, right? And that's a big part of what I think you're doing. Why is that important, do you feel, to have that, again, all of the above strategy, to not just focus on one energy source?
Yeah, it's all of the above approach is so important. I mean, if you go back 2 years ago and remember how natural gas prices increased, that's an example of having the diversity in our portfolio of fuels. And the reality is sometimes, the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. And so having additional fuel choices to rely on is important for us to maintain our commitment of reliability.
Brandi, as you talk about the energy transition, you look at the state, I think in many respects, the state of Indiana is in transition from an energy standpoint. And you look at the economic development deals that Indianapolis is landing, and there are some mega deals, a lot of them dealing with companies that are big energy users, data centers, the onset of artificial intelligence, semiconductors, all the different investments that we've seen in the state of Indiana, certainly. And this is happening in other parts of the country as well. But as you look at that demand for energy in Indiana, is Indiana, and you can speak specifically to AES Indiana, but positioned to deal with that big demand, that big energy demand that's in the offing?
We are positioned. I mean, the reality is the electric grid is the backbone of our state and our nation's economy. And so we want the state of Indiana to grow, and we want the state of Indiana to grow in right ways. And so that means it's going to take immense collaboration and partnership amongst our state's utilities, as well as with state agencies like IEDC, the State Utility Forecasting Group. And so that work is taking place today. I mean, AES Indiana, we're getting calls from these large tech companies who are looking across our service territory. I mentioned earlier a lot of the plans and the announcements that we've made recently have been part of our 2022 integrated plan. AES Indiana is preparing for our next one, which actually takes place next year, 2025. If I were going back to the large conversations in 2022 of how we looked at growth, the big conversation was around electric vehicles. And I still believe electric vehicle adoption is happening. I don't know that it's happening as fast as some of us thought 3 years ago, but I anticipate the large part of our conversation as we prepare for our 2025 IRP will be these hyperscalers and the megaloads. And our industry must come together and work together to ensure that we can create the path for these companies to come, but also do it in a way that doesn't compromise reliability for our existing customers.
Yeah, how big a challenge is that for utilities like AES Indiana to deal with that? You mentioned electric vehicles, the electrification of the auto industry. That is happening, and Indiana's right in the heart of it from a manufacturing standpoint, certainly. What does all this demand? There are those out there who are very concerned about the ability of this country to meet that demand, that infrastructure demand. How big a challenge is that for utilities to meet that? And what are you doing? I mean, you mentioned working with other utilities. Is it kind of a part of it that you're competitive, but a collaborative process as well?
Yeah, I think right now we're sharing best practices and learning from each other. This is new for all of us, and I really look at it as an opportunity. I think the important part for those who are reading the headlines and seeing the opportunities coming to the state is to understand that many of these data centers aren't going to go online overnight. And so the key for the utilities to be prepared for this sort of growth is planning. It takes a while to build a natural gas plant, for instance. I think of our Eagle Valley facility in Martinsville, which is the newest plant in our fleet, which took about 5 years to build. And so, we know that there are needs today in Indiana. And as I think about some of the companies that we are talking to, they could grow up to 1 gigawatt. That's huge. I mean, this could equate to half of our current load. It can happen, but it's going to take planning and it's going to take collaboration outside of AES Indiana with other utilities, with our RTOs. But we are working closely together. We're working with state officials, and we know that this is important. We want to grow in these ways, and we're going to do it together.
You mentioned your integrated resource plan, last done in 2022, new one coming out in 2025. As you look at that plan and what will be involved there, can you give us some hints or highlights on what that plan might look like, some of the elements?
Yeah, well, the most important part of the IRP plan is that we do this in partnership with our stakeholders. So it's the opportunity for various stakeholders to get in front of us and for us to hear from them. So really, we build our plan in collaboration with customers and stakeholders. But I can tell you that if many of these projects that we're hearing about, these data centers come to fruition, it's going to take more generation. And so I absolutely anticipate that the outcome of that IRP for AES Indiana will not just about, new technologies, but a larger need for generation within our service territory.
You talk about technology and innovation. It's all part of this. From a workforce standpoint and getting the kinds of technical talent that you need, is that a challenge? A lot of companies talk about the need, the whole talent workforce equation and how it can be challenging. How are you finding the ability to get the people you need to staff these positions, especially in newer technologies?
Yeah, it's all about partnerships. And, Indiana is in a good place because we've got some incredible colleges and universities. So it's about partnering with those students early on and way before colleges and universities. And so one of the things that we're focused on is how can we get all of the great and diverse careers that are available within the energy industry in front of students earlier on at the elementary level. One program that AES globally has is called Energy for Talent. And we actually partner with colleges and universities across the United States. Every year, we get a rotation of Energy for Talent trainees here in Indiana. And so, for example, my trainee last year who worked within our energy efficiency demand side management team is now working at an AES facility in Palm Springs. And so it allows talent from across the US to rotate to different parts, not just functional areas, but different parts in the United States. And they can make a decision, where they want to take their energy career.
Much more ahead with Brandi Davis-Handy, the president of AES Indiana. When we return, we'll talk a bit about her path to the president's office. An Indianapolis native, talk about growing up in India and a lot more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Brandi Davis-Handy. Brandi's the president at AES Indiana. Got a lot going on in the utility business, to be sure, with this energy transition that is taking place and the big push for data centers and a number of big energy users. And I know that's taking up a lot of your time, Brandi, but let's talk more on the personal side. You are an Indy native, right? Grew up in Indianapolis?
Yeah, born and raised in Indy, graduated from Lawrence Central High School.
Yeah, right. Lawrence Central Bears. Talk about growing up in Indianapolis. What was growing up in Indy like for you?
I love Indy, which is why I'm still here in Indy. And I always say, there's something for everyone. So whether it's sports, arts and culture, one of the things that I've always prided myself on throughout my career has been my community involvement, but that's partly because of the experience that I had in Indy growing up. And so my parents did a great job of making sure that I was connected to so many organizations. I, bumped into Dennis Bland a couple of weeks ago and I said, hey, did you realize I went through CLD? And it was a great experience for me. I remember, early on in my career, I worked at the 500 Festival, but I also have, really vivid memories of my mom working in the Landmark Center and sitting in front of that building, watching the 500 Festival parade year after year. So the community, I believe, has shaped me to who I am today. And I think it's just an awesome opportunity for me to be in a position today where I can help give back to those organizations that have played such a meaningful role in my life.
Obviously, your parents played a big role in your life in that volunteerism, community connection piece for you. Talk about the impact of your parents, maybe what they did career-wise as you were growing up.
Yeah, I think the community part, volunteerism has been a big part of how I was raised. And a great example would be my dad, who I remember when I was younger, he was always a big brother. As part of Big Brothers. Before it was Big Brothers, Big Sisters. But I remember always having a little around. And my dad served on that board for 20 years. And when he stepped off of the board 20 years later, I had the honor of taking his board seat. So I just rolled off almost a decade later from the Big Brothers Big Sisters board. That organization will always, I'll always be connected, but really had the honor in the last 3 years of serving as their board chair. So that's just, one example. As I think about my experience with SKL, Stanley K Leadership Program, Brian Payne was my mentor, and my connection there is my mom actually retired from CICF. And so I've had all of these full circle moments in the city of Indianapolis, but I think that that's what makes us such a great city to live in.
Yeah. What were you, Lawrence Central High School, were you academics, sports, music? What was a young Brandi? What were your big interests?
I was not sports, so definitely academics. I was president of the speech team, so I loved speech and debate.
Yeah.
And so I loved poetry. I was really into drama. And then I learned early on that I really loved the production and the organization side of theater. And so ended up always being the student director because I love to help keep everything on track. And I also was in show choir.
Oh, very good. Okay. When it came time for college, Joe, you left Indiana, right? Hampton University in Virginia. What led to that decision? Did you think about staying in state, or was Hampton that number one choice?
Yeah. So what was most important to me, I really wanted the experience of going to an HBCU, a historically Black college and university, which there's a history in my family. My dad went to Tennessee State, my mom Tuskegee, my sister Florida A&M University, and another connection to community organizations. I remember probably my junior year of high school going on a college tour that was sponsored by the Indiana Black Expo and really getting exposure to a variety of different HBCUs. And when I had the opportunity to visit the campus of Hampton University, just fell in love with it.
Yeah. And you mentioned that. And I think of the Circle City Classic, and I have been to the luncheon a number of times. I remember seeing so many young people there And you would be an example of someone who was influenced by that experience.
Yeah, my senior year of high school, I was a Circle City Classic princess.
Wow.
And I remember every year at Hampton coming home, and at that point, coming home in October and bringing friends to go to the Classics. So I grew up in a household where we were always hosting people Classic weekend, being a part of an HBCU family. My parents were really excited to open the doors and invite family and friends to come attend the game with us.
So you started your career as a broadcast journalist, right?
Yeah.
And then you were smart. You got out of that. You got out of that racket. What did you major in journalism or TV?
I
radio?
did. I majored in journalism. Well, I majored in mass media arts with an emphasis in broadcast journalism. Wanted to be Oprah Winfrey. I always told everyone I'm going to be the next Oprah. Started my journalism career in the southeastern part of North Carolina, in Wilmington, North Carolina. Also ran a news bureau for a 24-hour news network. I was in Fayetteville and then came back home. And I think during that time, did some self-reflecting and thought, you know what, there's a number of different ways to tell stories and, made the transition from reporting to public relations.
Good. As you think on the advancement of your career, you mentioned Brian Payne as a mentor. Were there other mentors, and how for your career advancement? How important have mentors been in your career?
Yeah, mentors are so important. I think it has been honestly the voices of others who have mentored me to make me see the possibilities. Having the degree in broadcast journalism, starting as a reporter, making that transition to communications, I think I went through a period where I very much put myself in a box of this is what I do. And I think once I got to the point of understanding the strategic value that communications brings to any organization and having the opportunity to have a seat at the table really, opened up the lens for all the possibilities within my career. And so I've had a great opportunity here at AES, starting first on the communication side. And when I left the company in 2018 and returned in 2021 as the Chief Public Relations Officer, and then transitioned to the role of Chief Customer Officer. And then here we are today. And so, I think the advice that I always give others and those that I mentor are don't limit your possibilities. I think, what tends to stand in front of us, is ourself. And so don't focus on what my path is, what others' path are. We can all create our own path. It's about having the passion and dedication to what's in front of you.
You have advanced in an industry that I would imagine is still pretty much a male-dominated industry, the utility business. As you talk to other women who may aspire to jobs in the utility industry, what do you any advice to them, or do you say have any particular words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of that same advice of don't limit your possibilities, but use your voice. And, AES, I'm, proud to say that I work with at a company that has a number of tremendous female leaders. And there have been some great female leaders here in Indiana that have come before me. And so when you have that opportunity to have that seat at the table, use your voice. And, my favorite quote always is lift as you climb. And so as I sit in my role today, also identifying the other great female talent that we have within our organization and how can I be a resource to helping them grow in their career.
Yeah, and along those lines, do you feel a need, a desire really to help young professionals, aspiring young people, male or female, to advance in their careers? You talked about the impact of mentors on your career. Is that something you enjoy doing in terms of helping young people move up in their careers?
Absolutely, because, others did it for me. And I can remember being in those first 3 roles in my career and reaching out. I don't know if it was an email or me sending a letter or a call, but reaching out and saying, hey, I'd love to meet with you. I'd love to get some advice. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we shy away from that outreach, but no one ever said no. And it was really getting their perspective that led me to think about things differently. And I think absolutely, I want to pay that forward.
Brandi, as you look at the next, 5 to 10 years, certainly there's been a lot of change. We're in the midst of change in the utility business, in the energy sector. What do you see as the vision, if you will, your vision for AES Indiana, and more broadly that energy transition in Indiana? What can you see happening out in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I really want AES Indiana to help lead this energy transition within the state, but doing so in a way that we bring our customers and our communities along. And what I really mean by that is we've talked about, data centers, hyperscalers. I think that there's an opportunity for historic growth for our company, historic growth for the state of Indiana. And I want that growth to happen here within our service territory, but I want to do it in a way that we can also strengthen reliability for our customers and continue to evolve in terms of working with and giving offerings to our customers that also allows them to grow within their own personal sustainability objectives, whether that's our large corporations or an individual family at home. And so to me, that's going to be the ultimate success.
Brandi Davis-Handy is the president at AES Indiana. Brandi, it's always great to catch up with you. Really appreciate you taking the time to join me on the podcast, and hope to see you soon.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We're a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can catch all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.